Hello everyone. If you've spent any time in Sunday school, you might be familiar with the story of David and Goliath. If you don't know the story, a quick summary is that the Israelites were at war with the Philistines. That each set up camp on the top of a hill. And the way that it worked was that instead of the whole army going out to fight each other, they would select a champion. And the two champions would fight, and whoever won would win the war. And the story in 1 Samuel tells us that the Philistines picked a beast of a man called Goliath, and none of the Israelites were brave enough to come out to fight him. And so every day Goliath would come out and shout insults and taunts at the Israelite people because they were too scared to come and fight Goliath. Until David comes along. Now David is the youngest of 8 sons, and he is the shepherd, and he had been sent by his father to bring food to his brothers who were soldiers in the Israelite army. And when David hears Goliath issuing these taunts and mocking the Israelite army, he says, "Why is no one prepared to fight this man? I'll do it." And so David goes to the king and says he will fight Goliath, and the king says, "Well, you can't fight Goliath, you're just a boy." And David says to the king, "I have fought bears and lions to rescue my sheep. The same God who rescued me from the paw of the bear and the lion will be with me now." So the king, who's probably out of options, says, "Okay, go for it," and he gives David his own armor. And David tries on the king's armor and says, "You know what, this isn't going to work, it doesn't fit, it's too heavy." He takes it off and he picks up his shepherd's staff, his slingshot, and 5 smooth stones. And David defeats Goliath with a well-aimed rock to the forehead. Now there's a lot that we can take from the story, and people have been unpacking the story of David and Goliath for generations. But just 3 thoughts for us as we continue into the start of this new year, 2024. The first thing is that David took a moment to look back. He said, "The same God who helped me in the past is the one who will be with me now." And at the start of this year, won't you take just a moment to reflect on the year that has been? What was good? Where was the joy? What was difficult? Where was the grief? Unless we take some time to think quite intentionally around our experiences, we don't actually learn from them, and we are bound to repeat them. So take a few moments to think about what was good and where God was with you in the year that has passed, so that we can look ahead with hope into the year that is coming. David looked back. And then David looked ahead. He was quite intentional about how he was going to live his life. He made some choices, he exercised some agency, he lived his life on purpose. And he knew that being a slave to the Philistines was not part of God's plan for him and his people. He had a sense of God's invitation to him. He was looking ahead to the life and the promises that he knows God had in store for him. So what is God's invitation to you in this season? As you head into this new year, what are you hoping for? What are the kinds of things that might need to be in place in your life in order for you to live life on purpose, in order for you to step into God's invitation for you? Look back and look ahead. And then take a moment to consider what you have right now. David had his shepherd's staff, his sling, and those 5 smooth stones, and when offered to God, did more than he probably ever thought possible, more than he could ever have imagined. So often we think that God's invitation to us is to some future idealized version of who we could be, when actually God's invitation is to us here and now, to who we are. What are the gifts that you bring into this season? What are your passions? What are your delights? What are your strengths and your weaknesses? Because the invitation is to the whole of you as you are right now. And when you offer yourself to God, it is God who can use those things in surprising ways. So what are some of the things that you have right now that, when offered to God, could be used for His glory in the year ahead? Take a moment to think back, take a moment to look ahead, and take a moment to consider what it is that you have right now that God can use as you step into this new year. Amen.